Welcome to the midweek edition of Legal AF. Don't adjust your dials. Sitting in for Karen Freeman Agnifilo is our friend and legal commentator from Meidas Touch, Dina Doll. And Dina, we got to jump right into it. I'll tell you who's not weird. That's you, Dina Doll. And I'm glad that you're here. But we've got as a backdrop at the intersection of law and politics to what we're going to talk about today. We've got a surging Vice President Kamala Harris, who's already taken the lead in the 5 major battleground states. She's done everything that she can do to activate all the major voting blocs that are historically Democratic, but certainly were sort of hanging back when President Biden was the candidate. But now, whether it's Gen Z or it's the black and brown vote or it's women or people that support women, they are not just voting for Kamala Harris, but excited to vote for her. There's a surge in people that have told pollsters by over 30 or 40% that they are going to now get off the couch and vote because of Kamala Harris, and that spells bad news for Donald Trump. You and I were joking before we started the show today that I almost think now Donald Trump is purposely tanking this election. There's no other way to explain his decision, or whoever's decision it was, and if it was his, another one of bad judgment, to go in front of a group of black journalists and question Kamala Harris's blackness. Nothing like an old white guy who's a racist to question the racial identity or ethnicity of a candidate. I mean, it's almost, I'm thinking like, if you wrote a script of how do I throw the election and how do I get my opponent's constituency to get really enthusiastic to vote for her, this would be the way to do it. And so against that backdrop, we're going to talk about, and of course, we got JD Vance, which I'm trying to come up. I'm not Michael Cohen, but I'm trying to come up with nicknames for JD Vance. I think drag coefficient on the ticket is one. The legend of Beggar Vance is another. He is doing, all Donald Trump is doing damage control about his vice presidential candidate, which is the exact opposite of the do no harm is why you pick the person. And if Kamala is already ahead in the polls, she hasn't even gotten the convention bounce or the vice president pick bounce. And Donald Trump's high point is got to be convention, Butler, Pennsylvania, whatever happened there, and Mar-a-Lago's indictment getting dismissed, which we're going to talk about here. That's his high point. He peaked in July, but we got an election in November, and we've got cases to talk about here. And here on the midweek edition, we're going to talk about Merrick Garland, in his own way, finally responding to the criticism that he doesn't know how to do his job, or he mistakenly appointed a special counsel that wasn't properly empowered or funded. He screwed up the whole Mar-a-Lago thing. We're going to hear from Merrick Garland, not live, but we've got some clips of him and his fight back and what it means for the 11th Circuit appeal that will be resolved before the summer is over about Aileen Cannon's outlier rogue decision against the weight of Supreme Court precedent going back 50 years to dismiss the indictment because she doesn't think the special counsel is valid or anything like that. And speaking of judges who do know what they're doing and aren't weird, our operative phrase today, we got Judge Chutkan. She is going to be holding a hearing in mid-August. We're already in August, effectively, about how to put that D.C. election interference case of the real, not imagined, valid, not invalid, constitutional, not unconstitutional special counsel Jack Smith and his D.C. election interference case. She's got a lot of work to do. She's going to be on vacation, so we're not going to hear from her till about the 12th of August, but we kind of have an idea of what she's going to be handling. We wanted to give people a little bit of a viewing guide about Judge Chutkan and her next hearing in that particular case. And then we'll talk about what else, yet another leak at the Supreme Court of another abortion decision. I mean, what is it with this Supreme Court and women's reproductive rights? They just can't keep their mouths shut, and it only creates a negative impact on our perception of the United States Supreme Court and their integrity. And I think their integrity is in shreds. And against that backdrop of that event, we've got Vice President Harris, who's going to be the nominee for president, of course, and Joe Biden in his last remaining days going after what people are demanding: the reformation of that branch of government. And we're going to talk about the various ways that the Biden-Harris administration are going to do it and why this may be the exact right moment on the heels of all the scandals with Clarence Thomas, with Alito, the new leaks that we'll talk about the Idaho decision on abortion, and the one that came out 2 years ago in the Dobbs decision. This might be just the perfect, exquisite timing and something that Kamala Harris can make as part of her closing argument to the American people and in her future, I guess, debate with Donald Trump. Dina, long-winded introduction. Glad you're here.
Oh my gosh, so much there. And yeah, she's electric right now. And the chances of her winning means all these legal issues against Trump continue. So it's a really exciting time, not only for her to be president, for those of us who want him to be held legally accountable, and makes it more likely too. And just real fast about your comment about JD Vance, like he may be saving democracy, not only because he's a drag on a ticket, but because Trump can't be a loser. And maybe he can point to JD Vance and blame him for losing rather than try to overthrow our government today again because he can't lose. So let's see what goes with that. But maybe he needs a scapegoat. Let's be honest, right?
Trump? Yeah. I agree. I mean, there's already talk that Trump may try to fire Vance using Joe Biden reshuffling the deck as his example. Look, if anybody's going to use an example, I see somebody in the chat tonight saying, and I'm not sure I disagree with this, I want to get your opinion. Somebody in the chat tonight is saying, you know what Joe Biden should do on the way out? He should exercise his pardon power, which is unfettered, and pardon Hunter Biden. Yeah. Let's end the long national nightmare that is the Hunter Biden affair once and for all and put it out of its misery. And you know what? What do you think? That's a good question from the chat. What do you think Joe Biden would use his unfettered pardon power? He's got the right. He'll be on his waning. It could be the 11:59, the last moment before he leaves. Do you think he does it? And do you think he should do it?
I think he should do it. I mean, it's tough because you already said he wouldn't do it. So he might feel like he needs to stick to that. But that was such a political, conviction. I think actually, if Biden doesn't feel like he can do it, I think Kamala Harris, if she wins, should do it. I think that should be over. And so one way or the other, I do think he should be pardoned. And I hope Joe Biden doesn't feel like he has to stick to what he said, because that was, I think, just beyond by convicting him.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and it could be the first great thing that Kamala does. She'll do a lot of great things in the first 100 days, in the first 4 years, or first four of her 8-year term there. And what we're watching with Kamala, and then we'll switch from the politics to the intersection of law and politics, but it's so important. We're such an important moment now. We'd be remiss if our network didn't pivot and talk more about the surging candidacy of Kamala Harris, who so deserves it. People are like, well, God, who is this person? She's so appealing. She's so charismatic. She has so much leadership and a body of work, right? Because when she was vice president, there's another job to be done, which is you're second and you stand behind the president, and you don't, you're not, even though I think she was a co-president in the way that Biden was for Barack Obama, or the way that Gore was for Clinton. I think she was a partner in that office of the presidency. There was a president, and there's things you can and can't do, and things you can and can't say. You can't speak your mind. I mean, Joe Biden was notorious for speaking his mind when he was Obama's vice president, but he was also an older guy that was prone to saying things out loud. She's not going to do that. She is a cautious, careful, charismatic leader. But what we're seeing is her making her case for being president of the United States, not in a continuation. It's not an elevation. It's not a promotion. It's a whole nother job. And it's a whole nother closing argument that this is what we're watching. And what we're watching, I think, I want to get your opinion on this, is Donald Trump, now that the script has been flipped, all of his old hackneyed, old guy jokes are gone, because he's the old guy now, right? He'll be the oldest person to occupy the White House if he were to win. So forget that. And then it points out so poignantly his inherent racism, and he can't help himself. I mean, we saw it in this mind-blowing interview, and Meidas is running clips on it, of Donald Trump in Detroit with black journalists. Like, I mean, whoever let him do that should be either fired or given the Congressional Medal of Honor if this leads to his loss, which it should at election time. But just pointing up a 59-year-old woman candidate who's also proud of being both Black and being Indian and whatever else she self-identifies as, and she has the right to do that, to see that up against Donald Trump is going to drive him mad. And we're just watching. If what happened in Pennsylvania didn't cause him to have PTSD, going up against Kamala Harris now it will. So let's talk about, comment on that, and then we'll talk about Merrick Garland and how he's finally fighting for himself and fighting back as well.
I mean, I saw that comment that Trump made, kind of like everyone else in the news, and it was just shocking. I mean, we know he's racist, but it's like he keeps unraveling the onion and it gets worse and worse. You know, I'm multicultural. I grew up in a multicultural family. My father is an immigrant, and my mother was born here for years. And my father's Arabic, my mom's European. And I'm like, how do you not get the concept that most, frankly, people in this country are either biracial or grow up in a multi-ethnic home? I'm like, really? Like, are you that clueless? And you think this is a good argument? Like, he just shows how how disconnected he is really to the American people. So I don't know. He keeps shocking me in a bad way. And I don't think that certainly like it adds at all to any of his constituents, but it seems to be like the playbook. He's doubling down on the racism. He's thinking it's helping him. JD Vance, you know, to me, it doesn't work. And it's just kind of disgusting. No. And frankly, I don't understand how you can misunderstand millions of Americans and still think they're going to vote for you.
It's the last gasp of this party. They're intellectually and morally bankrupt and hollowed out. The country is getting browner, not whiter. That's a good thing, and more diverse. They want to, you know, they want to get into this whole DEI and, you know, oh, the bridge collapsed because it was a DEI mayor and the border is out of control because it's a D. They fell in love with the whole, you know, all the attacks that seemed to land successfully during the Black Lives Matter movement now ring quite hollow when the candidate against you is an accomplished woman who self-identifies however she self-identifies. She does Black. I mean, she went to an historic Black university. She was a member of a historic Black sorority. I mean, the fact that Donald Trump just woke up and figured out, you know, how she self-identified is not the measure of her character or, you know, or who she is as a person. But we just have to keep pressurizing Donald Trump, because the more tired and exhausted and set upon that he is by media like Legal AF and Meidas Touch and the Kamala Harris campaign, which is doing a masterful job of responding almost in the immediacy to anything. By the time it's coming out of his mouth like a cartoon balloon, they've already got it flipped on him with a meme and a clip and her speech. I mean,
it's amazing.
Somebody told me on Meidas Touch, I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe it because I was told by our people that she's using the same people that Biden was using, but it's in her hands with her vitality and her energy and her own lawyer, prosecutor, you know, like you and me, lawyers who know how to make a point and make it quick. It is just, I mean, we remarked on when Obama had, you know, Pluff and Axelrod. People forget who these people were who helped get him elected. But right now, she's running a flawless campaign. We can't take it for granted. We got to work hard for her. Let's talk about Merrick Garland, because he's taken a lot of flack. He's not weird, but he's taken a lot of flack. And he went on a recent interview in which it was like a wide-ranging interview. They talked about the Secret Service, which is sort of underneath DOJ and different other Homeland Security and things. And they got to the point about Aileen Cannon, the judge in Southern District of Florida, who decided to dismiss the entirety of the indictment because she found that Jack Smith is a figment of our imagination. That he's just a guy. He's just a stranger. He's just Jack Smith. He's not a special prosecutor or counsel at all. He has no powers and he's not funded properly. And the indictment should go by the wayside. Let's hear from Merrick Garland, who's finally spoken up and spoken out about whether Jack Smith is employed by the Department of Justice and whether he takes his ultimate marching orders from somebody named the Attorney General.
Judge Aileen Cannon ruled that the way the Justice Department has been picking special counsels for decades is illegal, unconstitutional. Why do you disagree with that?
Look, as you well know, I picked this room for this interview. This is my favorite room in the Justice Department. It's a law library. For more than 20 years, I was a federal judge. Do I look like somebody who would make that basic mistake about the law? I don't think so. Our position is that it's constitutional and valid. That's why we appealed. I will say that this is the same process of appointing special counsel as was followed in the previous administration and the special counsel Durham and special counsel Mueller in multiple special counsels over the decades going back to Watergate and the special prosecutor in that case. Till now, every single court, including the Supreme Court, that has considered the legality of a special counsel appointment has upheld it.
Right. So that's a very good point that General Garland made there. John Durham, who was a special counsel, who was part of the Russia investigation, but was under Barr, he was made a special counsel by Bill Barr, ultimately by Donald Trump. And nobody suggested that Donald Trump didn't have the power through his attorney general to create John Durham. And John Durham spent millions of dollars to do nothing and invest. He brought 3 prosecutions. They all failed. Nobody got convicted, and it was a ridiculous charade. But nobody challenged that. And for our audience, what Attorney General Garland is talking about, and I'll turn it over to you, Dina, about it. What he's talking about is back as far back as 1974, in a line of cases involving Richard Nixon, the then attorney general, acting attorney general, because attorney generals went to jail under Nixon. Okay. He was our first criminal president who was caught. And a lot of people went to jail around him, including some that are now talking heads and have been on our network and have given interviews. But, at the time they were criminals and they went to jail. But the Robert Bork, people might remember, was this close to becoming a Supreme Court justice, but didn't make it. He was then the acting attorney general. And before the Watergate Commission, which was a bipartisan, remember those days? Bipartisan congressional commission investigating what the heck happened with Watergate and what heads should roll. He made a promise that he would appoint a special prosecutor. That special prosecutor became Leon Jaworski. If you go back in Wiki and history, you'll see Leon Jaworski was the prosecutor for most of Watergate. That was based on a promise that was made from the acting attorney general to Congress. They were like, okay, that's fine. And so that's the start of it. And his powers were validated by the United States Supreme Court, who enforced his subpoena power as a special prosecutor. Then we had an independent counsel for a period of time under a congressional statute. And then that spawned things like the Ken Starr Whitewater investigation and what became Monica Lewinsky and her allegations against Clinton. Everybody hated it on both sides of the aisle. They got rid of that independent counsel role. And instead it was replaced by the Department of Justice, exercising its rights under the Constitution, under the Attorney General, to appoint inferior officers that report to the Attorney General, including what's called special attorneys that are listed in the Constitution. And that's exactly what Merrick Garland did. And every court that has looked at it, every court but Aileen Cannon, every federal court citing back to U.S. versus Nixon, the Supreme Court precedent, has upheld the validity of a special counsel, special prosecutor, whatever you want to call it. Not Aileen Cannon, new to the bench, appointed by Trump in 2020. No, 93 pages. She decided this has been done wrong all this time because she heeded the call of Clarence Thomas, right, who wrote his concurring opinion in the case about in the immunity case, and said, "Hey, Aileen," this is my paraphrase, my artist rendering. "Hey, why don't you argue that the special counsel is invalid, and then you get rid of the whole indictment?" Right on cue. 3 weeks later, she did exactly that. Talk to me about how you're seeing Merrick Garland, and why do you think, while the appeal is now pending before the 11th Circuit, why is Merrick Garland taking to the airwaves in order to basically give his position?
Oh, I loved that, hearing Merrick Garland, because for Merrick Garland, those are fighting words. Like, he is the most, even keel person out there, and when he's angry, and I wouldn't want to upset somebody that smart and with that much power. And that's what they've done to Merrick Garland. He has been trying to be so reasonable, and I think he's catching up to the rest of us. You can't be reasonable to unreasonable people, but he has acted. He was very moderate when Obama went to appoint him to the Supreme Court. At the time, he had voted very similar to Kavanaugh over all these years on the DC Court of Appeals. He was a very moderate to maybe even slightly conservative, and put into this position as Attorney General, taking it very seriously. He's so professional, tried to always seem above board. And this has finally gotten to him. And you know what? Good. Let's get him fired up. He's definitely fired up in that interview. He's frankly just shocked because the fact is Judge Cannon, what she tried to do was create new law. You can't do that as on the district court level. You can do that if you're at the Supreme Court level, but you can't do it at her level. She's just supposed to follow the law. It's very clear the law is that special counsels have been allowed. They allowed that congressional act that you mentioned, independent counsel, to lapse because they thought it was unnecessary. And all these years since then, everybody has acted as if the current, the pre-existing, let's say, congressional statutes toward attorney generals allow them to do it. So this is her trying to create new law. And the thing about Judge Cannon, and I say this a lot when I talked about her, is because people often talked about her criticism, saying she wasn't very smart. And that's just giving her an out. That's not it. She came from Gibson, Dun & Crutcher, the same law firm I came from, and the same law firm Ted Olson came from. If you remember Ted Olson, he represented Bush and Bush v. Gore. It's also got some liberal lions. Ted Boutros was the one that filed the lawsuit when Jim Jordan was trying to subpoena Alvin Bragg just recently in the New York DA case. So there's both sides, but there are some really high-powered political lawyers that come out of that law firm. It is not a coincidence that she took a Justice Alito, who is nearing retirement, right? And you said he called out to her and she heard back, and she was auditioning hey, you can step down. I will rule as you would want to rule. That was definitely a conversation, let's say, between the two of them, because it was not based in the law. And Trump, and she did it in front of Trump, who she was hoping would win and be able to appoint a Supreme Court justice. And, because a lot of times we see that, right? We see justices step down thinking that another justice like them will go in their place. We saw that when Kavanaugh was replaced, I think it was with Breyer, because he had clerked with him before, so he was comfortable stepping down, thinking he was going to replace him. So that happens. So she was clearly auditioning for the role of a substitute for Justice Alito. And frankly, the only way to stop that is by having Kamala win in November, which, as we talked about, is looking really great, but we still have to go out there and vote. But that's what she was doing. And so, she's making it political, but I love that Merrick Garland, he's got his fight in it now, I think, in a way he didn't before. They have ratcheted it up. And I wouldn't want to be somebody who's on the other side of Merrick Garland once he's fired up.
Yeah. And for those that are, I'm watching the chat. For those that want to watch Kamala, I agree. Go watch Kamala. She's come back. We're here. We're here. We'll be here all week. And we have audio versions of Legal AF. People always ask, how can they support the show? I'm also wondering why people are on slow-mo, because sometimes they catch me when I'm doing a piece of the argument or a piece of the discussion, and then before I turn it over to you, they're like, Popok, let the other person talk. I'm like, well, when you tune into the other person, what do you say there? So while you were analyzing, somebody just wrote, let her talk. I'm like, let her talk. I'm not even, my mic's not even on. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't think you understand how the show works. But listen, there's a lot going on at the same time. And if that's why people love multiple screens. Watch Kamala do her Texas sorority speech today. We cover all the speeches that we can on the Meidas Touch Network. It's really, really important. And what we're talking about is we think important, but I mean, we get it. We get you. And I saw another good comment in the chat, which was, why don't somebody should pardon Michael Cohen? I think that's a real possibility. I mean, Michael was hung out to dry by by Bill Barr / Donald Trump and
Mhm.
prosecuted as a result. I mean, there's some other issues that came up later on after that, but that would be, I think, certainly the Meidas Touch Network, and I'm friendly with Michael. I think Michael would appreciate it, and I think he deserves it. I mean, if you've seen the list of people that have been pardoned or had their sentences commuted or given clemency, Michael Cohen, who did a solid for America and democracy and paid a hefty price with his family, should be on that list. And I think those are things that we're going to talk about. So back to support for a minute.
Yeah.
We're getting awful close to 3 million free subscribers to the Meidas Touch Network. I mean, really, there's been a surge not only for Kamala Harris, but right along with it, new people coming on to the Meidas Touch Network and free subscribing. And I think we're going to get to 3 million before September. I say November. I think end of September it could happen. And that's with your support. We're a independent network, organically grown, word of mouth, and the way you do it is the way you're doing it here. Participate in the chat. We have clips of this that go out as after darks on YouTube. Send those off to your friends and family and all of that. We got a Patreon, Legal AF Patreon, where we've got exclusive content and videos you won't find anywhere else. You got hot takes that aren't anywhere else. You've got Professor Ben Meiselas giving you the breakdown of the law. You got me doing Popok talks. And then we've got this Monday for paid members. And our paid entry is pretty low. It's $10 a month. And you get exclusive content. Ben and me are going to do a live Zoom talk, a live Zoom meeting for everybody who's a paid member. It's your opportunity to ask questions of Ben or me or Ben and me, and what we can't answer live on a screen like this. And we just did one about a month ago. We had 1,500 people participate in that. It was so beautiful to see all the little boxes filled with everybody. And whatever we weren't doing live answering, one of us, the other one was in the chat answering questions on the fly there. And it went on for over an hour, and it was really well received. We're doing it again Monday, and it's going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific time, poor Ben, and 10 Central. And the way you get your link is we've got it in the Patreon itself under the paid membership. You'll see a Zoom link there. So it's a great way to do that. And then, of course, besides that, we've got our sponsors, and those are cultivated and brought together by Jordy and other parts of the Meidas Touch team. They're pro-democracy. They support us. They don't censor us. And watching the video is important. And then if you can, and you think the product's great, we've all endorsed them because we've gotten the products, we've used the products, we like the products, go out and help those sponsors. That helps keep the show on the air. And now we've got some of our pro-democracy sponsors right now. And after, when we get back, sorry, Salty, sounded like I was winding down there. I felt like the quarterback that was doing the wrong cadence for the snap. So when we get back, we will talk about the Chutkan case, the one that Judge Chutkan is presiding over. That's going to get back up and running by mid-August against Donald Trump. Talk about all the ins and outs of that, and we'll talk about the abortion leak from the Idaho decision and what that means for the all the remedial efforts that are the Biden-Harris presidency will try to get passed in order to reform all the things we hate about the United States Supreme Court. We'll talk about all of that, but first, our sponsors. What kind of night is it? Is it a single, a double, a triple? I'm not talking about alcohol. I'm talking about Sol's out-of-office microdose THC gummies in 3 strengths, plus no hangover. Out-of-office gummies come in 1.5 milligram, 3 milligram, and 6 milligram doses, and 3 delicious flavors. We love them for clearing your inbox, winding down after work, or listening to your favorite podcast like Legal AF, or heading out to a party. Raise your gummies, not your glasses. This podcast is sponsored by Sol. Sol's new out-of-office gummies are perfectly microdosed with hemp-derived THC and CBD to give any day that chillin' on the beach vibe. Did you know you can now buy hemp-derived THC products in all 50 states? So how can Sol send you THC products no matter where in the U.S. you live? Because of the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp-derived THC is now legal and accessible nationwide. Out-of-office gummies gives you that warm, fuzzy, euphoric microdose feeling without sending you to the moon. The Sol team suggests you start by eating half to 1 gummy, then wait 45 minutes to 1 hour to start feeling the effects. Micro doses of THC keep me feeling good without the anxious thoughts. And that's not all Sol's got. Whether you're looking for a sleep aid, enhanced focus, or pain relief, Sol has all your wellness needs covered. So give Sol a try. Head to getsol.com and use code LEGALAF for 30% off your order. That's 30% off your order using code LEGALAF. One last time, getsol.com and code LEGALAF for 30% off. It's hot outside, and your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code LEGALAF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LEGALAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. And we are back. We got a lot to talk about. Let's jump right in and have you take the lead on the Judge Chutkan case. Chutkan, D.C. election interference, Jack Smith, 4 counts, Donald Trump now returned to her. What do you think? When do you think it's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? And is this case ever going to get back up and running before the election or between the election and the inauguration?
Oh, great question. I mean, thank goodness we have Judge Chutkan in charge here, because this is not going to be an easy task. The Supreme Court basically sent it back down with her with some very broad but vague direction, right? As we know, they separated the actions into Article 2 actions, which have absolute immunity, other presidential actions, which have a presumption of immunity, and private actions while he was president that have no immunity at all. So we basically know at least a little bit of what's going to happen when she comes back from vacation. The parties will get together as a status conference, and most likely she's going to be asking for briefing as to what they each think, right? Like Jack Smith is going to argue that most of the actions are private actions. Maybe also some of them have a presumption of immunity, but he's really not going to want to say any of these have absolute immunity, whereas Trump's lawyers are going to say that they all have absolute immunity. So she's going to ask for a briefing for them to really kind of try to put forward their arguments as to what the different charges involve, what different actions involve, and give them a chance to flush that out. Most likely, we're also going to see Trump's lawyers try to put in this special counsel argument now that we have the Judge Cannon in Florida saying that it was, not proper. They would be remiss not to try to make that same argument with Judge Chutkan. We don't see Judge Chutkan agreeing with that like Judge Cannon, but they're going to make that argument. So they're going to have these, have to parse out. That's what Judge Chutkan is going to have to parse out. I think we're going to see briefs before the November election. At least I hope so, at least some sort of briefs. It is true, federal courts go very slowly. I think everybody here following along this knows how slowly this is. But, the parties knew this was coming, and they've also had this opinion now since the beginning of July. So I don't think it's unreasonable for her to give them maybe 60 days, let's say, to file some sort of briefs. Jack Smith should hopefully ask for it even sooner. because there might be this election not going his way. He should try to ask for it to kind of go as quickly as possible. In terms of like any bright precedent, let's say, we see, Trump was already sued civilly, right, for a lot of these same actions by the Capitol police officers that were injured and others. And he tried to dismiss that lawsuit, saying this was involving my presidential actions, and so therefore should be dismissed, because the law prior even to the Supreme Court before this was that a president couldn't be sued civilly for any of their official conduct, only for their private conduct. So he tried to file a motion to dismiss. And interestingly, the DC Court of Appeals did not allow him to dismiss that. And in particular, one of his own appointees noted in his concurring opinion that the campaign money was used for that rally that day where he gave that speech, like inciting the mob to go to the Capitol. That speech was done with campaign money. So they couldn't say as a matter of law that his actions that day were official. It was going to be an issue of fact. And so that they can then try to win like in a summary judgment motion, but they couldn't overcome that hurdle of a motion to dismiss. So we'll see Jack Smith certainly in their briefs making those similar arguments. He has the briefing already from those civil lawsuits that he can pull from and see what the DC Court of Appeals did for that. So there are, we saw the Supreme Court opinion mention his conversation with the Attorney General and how that was considered absolute immunity. We see the DC Court of Appeals saying that it was not, as a matter of law, official conduct in his speech at the campaign. So there's already some, let's say parameters out there in precedent that we have some idea maybe of Judge Chutkan will go, but there's a whole lot in between that. Again, like thankfully she's the judge in charge, because one, she's just been very professional in her handling of this case and has done it very efficiently and hasn't slowed it down unnecessarily like Judge Cannon. But also this is going to be difficult. It's going to be a big ask legally to be the first judge to apply this broad yet vague Supreme Court decision. But I do think we're going to see something in writing from the parties before the election.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just for those that are tuning in late, Karen, we start getting in the summers, and that sometimes means family and travel and things like that. And so Karen's doing great, but wasn't available right at the moment that we usually do the show. So Dina Doll, who's kind of becoming a regular stand-in and has joined us on Saturday editions of Legal AF when Ben was getting married with Karen, and has done duets with me, and we're doing a lot more of them, especially about the United States Supreme Court and the decision there, which we're going to talk about next. We're going to try to cover the Supreme Court regularly, and together I'll fill in a couple of things that I know, or I think I know. The reason that there's been a delay even this long is that there's a certain amount of time after the United States Supreme Court rules before the mandate actually gets turned over to the trial judge in order to execute on it. And that would have timed out about the 2nd of August. But Judge Chutkan, as somebody said in our chat, wisely picked up on, Judge Chutkan had told the parties that unless there's a trial, she was taking her regularly scheduled vacation. She's entitled to a vacation. Nobody's been under more pressure as a judge than Judge Chutkan. Death threats, racist voicemail messages left on her voicemail. She has Secret Service now guarding her. The person deserves a vacation, and so she's taking her holiday. But we think she's back somewhere around August 12th, and I think that's when she's going to call the parties together for this conference that you're talking about to sort through all of these issues. And I'm not sure she actually has to spit out the deadlines 60 days out. She's done things much quicker in the past when it came to the immunity decision. For instance, she had them brief it within 2 or 3 weeks and rendered their decision. I think given the political calendar, the political timetable, even though it's not driven by that, I think she's sensitive that the electorate and Donald Trump, the thing that Donald Trump never likes to acknowledge is that the reason that the public has a seat at the table of the criminal justice system is so that you can clear your name in public. So you don't have a cloud over you if you didn't do the thing, and that gets resolved quicker. Trials that are postponed 3 and 4 years about criminal matters just means that people think you're the fill in the blank, the rapist, the fraudster, the espionage violator, the obstruction of justice person for a longer period of time.
Sure.
For him, because he's tried to argue that the entirety of the state and federal criminal justice system, except for his judges, are against him, as is all, then he is the opposite. He doesn't want to clear his name. He thinks he doesn't need to for his base, his red MAGA red meat eating base, which may be true, but he's not creating any new voters with this strategy. He's only activating and energizing his base. And the base, each person in the base can only vote once. And in order to overcome the electoral advantage of the Democrats, especially now in the hands of Kamala Harris, who can now run the table in the states the way that Barack Obama did, and bring together those groups the way that Barack Obama did, even in a way that Joe Biden didn't. We love Joe Biden, but Joe Biden got elected at a very anomalous period. He was able to campaign from the basement during COVID. This is 2024, and this is a whole different generation of voter. And so she's the right person at the right moment in time, and he is a relic, a racist relic from the past. And that's what we're watching play out over and over again, whether it's the speech that she just gave in Texas or whatever it was. So let's so I think it'll go a little bit faster. I think we'll have, it should go faster. We'll have some sort of, and then the last thing I want to leave out, and I don't know the answer to this, I'll just put it out there to posit it for right now, is that Jack Smith also has to make his own decision, whether he's going to go back through a grand jury and he is going to come up with a new indictment of Donald Trump that comports with the July 1st ruling by the Supreme Court on immunity, or because that would sort of solve the problem. You remove all of the things in there that they had troubles with, and you just re-indict. Now, it would delay things because you got to go through an indictment process. It'd take you several weeks to probably get that up and running. And then you'd have a new indictment, and then the clock sort of starts over. I'm not sure he wants to do that. If I were him, I would just let Judge Chutkan do her thing, use her surgeon's knife, figure out what falls into each of the buckets, figure out what happens to the 2 extra counts about obstruction of an official proceeding, and try to get the wheels back on this wagon, rolling towards a case, more likely towards an inauguration of hopefully Kamala Harris than anything else. I was going to turn, unless you had something else on that, I want to get to our last topic, which is about the Supreme Court, new leaks, new information, and the new plan that the Biden-Harris, soon-to-be Harris, campaign are going to try to do in the reformation of the United States Supreme Court. Anything else on Chutkan?
No, other than let's get it going. So glad to, the excitement around Harris makes it so much more likely that this is going to continue, because if she wins, this will continue, which is huge. That's a really, really important indictment against him relating to January 6th. So again, so glad it's in her hands, and I'll be hugely excited if it comes before 60 days. So we'll get a chance to talk about it sooner than later.
Yeah, on the fly, we have an amazing sometimes we just shout out their name and people don't realize that we have an amazing production team that supports all of the podcasts, all the content providers, all the hot takes. You and I and others know them by name. I've met them in person. I've taken them to lunch and dinner. One of them was at my baby naming on Sunday. I mean, we're a family, and the leader of that pack is Adam Salton. So we call him Salty. And on the fly, while you and I are talking, he and I are going back and forth with, hey, do we have a clip on this? And we do. So we talked a lot tonight about this talking about weird. Donald Trump is weird and racist. And his decision to go into the Lion's Den and give an interview with Black journalists, and in the same moment, just what was that show on television or that book? Stupid crap my father says, and just stuff he says out loud that are just inherently racist, including attacking a person's personal identity of how they identify in terms of race or ethnicity or religion or whatever. And Kamala is firing back, and we have a clip.
We all here remember what those 4 years were like. And today, we were given yet another reminder. This afternoon, Donald Trump spoke at the annual meeting of the National Association of Black Journalists. And it was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better. The American people deserve a leader who tells the truth, a leader who does not respond with hostility and anger when confronted with the facts. We deserve a leader who understands that our differences do not divide us. They are an essential source of our strength. So I say to Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, ours is a fight for the future. And it is a fight for freedom.
When she was inaugurated with Joe Biden, I got hair that stood up on my arms in that historic moment. And to watch how far she's even come from there. And now she has this she has naturally this infectious way of laughing off and smiling the way that Barack Obama did, that, you know, that is just so perfect. She says, so she starts to smile, and the audience she has the audience eating out of the palm of her hands at that moment. And that comes from strength. That comes from confidence. That comes from, she is not the same person even 4 years ago that we saw. And those kind of speeches, the hair is back up, you know, up on my arms, which is a great sign, because that usually means good things are around the corner. What do you think about Kamala addressing her sorority, and how she so craftily and so instantly responded to Donald Trump earlier in the day?
I think smiling and laughing at him is such a perfect response. Although he is like a threat to our democracy, it gives him like a stature that, you know, he likes. And laughing at him, he hates that. And I think it's a perfect way to handle a bully. And she's right about the disrespect. I mean, the party who used to want government, less government, right? That used to be the Republican Party. It was all about small government. And now it's like, because really, whose business is it what race she wants to identify with, or what race anybody's wants to identify with? Whose business is it if people want to have children or not, or what gender they identify with, or what sexual orientation they want to identify with? It's just disrespectful, like she said in that speech. And it's like none of their business. And I love how she says it, but she says it with a smile, which is the perfect way to handle a bully like Donald Trump.
Oh yeah. I have a colleague that works with me, and apropos of nothing, although she knows what I do for a living here on Legal AF, as I walked into the office the other day, she looked at me and she said, "I'm a childless cat lady. And I'm not only voting for Kamala Harris, I'm bringing 10 other people with me."
Yeah.
And that is the difference that will make Kamala Harris, with our help, the first female president of the United States. It's the difference. Yeah, it's the difference, really, as much as people liked Hillary, and I'm not here to pillory Hillary. Okay, I'm not here about that. But I voted for Hillary, of course, but I had trouble getting 10 other people to go with me to vote for Hillary, and that was the problem. I mean, when I was sitting at a table of professional women and men, mainly women, and I was the only person voting for Hillary in New York, that's a bad table. That's not going to happen with Kamala. When I voted for Barack Obama and supported Barack Obama, I not only voted, I got 10 other people to vote with me for Barack Obama. And that's what we need to do as a collective here on the audience of the Meidas Touch Network, is not just vote. It's to register to vote other people. It's to get people to vote who have never voted before and to vote in this direction. I just got another text from, people know I lived in Florida for 20 years. And I've always been on the legal team for the Democratic Party every presidential season. When I lived in Florida and a voter in Florida, I could be inside the polls and helping to guide and make sure that votes got properly cast and people that showed up with the proper ID or whatever they needed or registered properly got to vote that day. And then when I no longer, like 4 years ago, I went down to Florida, I could stand outside and coordinate with the insiders about what I was watching and observing there. And I did that out of my old polling precinct. And I just got the text to do the same thing this coming election. And I'm going to fly down to Florida again, and I'll be assigned to a poll in a precinct. And these are the kind of things that we need to do, right? It's a contact sport. It's a participatory democracy. And so I'm not worried about the Meidas Touch and the Meidas Mighty and the legal AFers, but the people in your lives in those concentric circles around you, get them to go do something. I have people that I met when I was covering the Trump trial, and you were covering the Trump trial down at court, and I bumped into some legal AFers who saw me doing a remote, and we started talking. They said, we live in, well, were they in Pennsylvania? No, they were in a state that was definitely blue. And they were like, well, our vote doesn't matter. I said, right. So go fly to a state where registration and voting matters. Go to Pennsylvania, go to Georgia, go to Wisconsin, go to Arizona, go to Nevada, go to Michigan, go to places where it matters and help on the ground. Work a phone bank. You don't have to be a registered voter in that community to either get somebody to sign to register to vote or to help people to register to vote or to work phone banks. You don't. And so these are things that when people ask, what can we do? That's what we can do, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do the same thing. I'm a legal voter protection. I did that for North Carolina in 2020, same help with the law. But I've done so many non-legal volunteering things. I've postcarded, I've phone banked, I've canvassed. You don't need to be a lawyer. And in Georgia, when we won that special election in Georgia, California, there were more California volunteers helping that special election than any other volunteers. So to your point, you don't need to live in the state. You don't need to live in the state. And to me, the people, I always hear people say, I'm so busy, right? That's usually the worry, and that you have to take on more than you can do. I'm here to tell you, you can do as little or as much as you want, right? You sign up, they're fantastic at training you. It's really usually quick, easy training, so easy. For non-legal stuff, so easy. And it's okay if you can't do that much. If we each contribute like an hour of our time a week, that actually really adds up. And it's so much fun. I've had phone conversations with people on phone banking. I don't know. I love to talk, right, Popok? So, but I have a great time, actually. I mean, I've had a few people who like aren't in agreement, but for the most part on phone banking, they tend to have you call likely voters. And so you talk to like-minded people and you get to help convince them to vote. And so I think it's so satisfying. I love doing it. And all of the ways I love doing it. And so if you've never volunteered before, sign up. They give you so many texts and so many emails. They make it very easy to do. And you don't have to make a huge commitment. You just do what you can. You just do a little bit.
It's also for those that have done it, like you and me, it's also very rewarding.
Rewarding.
There's so much energy and power for being in a room, like when the training days, to be in a room, whatever you're training for, phone banks or registration or attorneys that are working polls. It is so rewarding to be around like-minded people that you would never normally pass in the supermarket or on the street and maybe not know, because we don't all wear our political affiliations on our sleeve, although I have been known to wear my legal AF shirt out and start a conversation. But it's just so energizing and rewarding. And you really do feel, even though hundreds of millions of people vote, and you really do feel, especially if your candidate wins, like you made a difference. And I can't put into words the feeling that you will get, especially if you're on we're on the right side of history and we have a president, Kamala Harris. For those that join late, sometimes we use phrases and we're very careful about trying to educate at the same time that we talk. But I used the term earlier that I caught on the chat. Some people didn't know, which is DEI, which is diversity, equity, inclusion. That is we used to just call it diversity. There used to be offices of diversity at companies or in universities, and that was a way to make sure that their employees, their student body, their fill in the blank were diverse. And then it became diversity, equity, and inclusion to bring everybody in. And then in order to make that a 4-letter word, MAGA adopted it. Every time they could try to tie something back to a brown or black person or a woman, they would say, oh, that's a DEI hire. In other words, affirmative action. They didn't get the job on their merit. They got the job because of that's. So when that's the code word. When you hear them call Kamala Harris a DEI hire by Joe Biden, they're saying she's not qualified. Just like they're saying, oh, well, it took her 2 times to pass the bar exam. Believe me, there are plenty of people that didn't pass the bar exam on the first try. JFK Jr., I think he had, may rest in peace, he had, I think, 4 times to pass the New York bar. It's a very hard bar. California is one of the hardest bars, but she passed the bar. Who cares? I know plenty of people that failed the CPA exam, many parts of it before they became wonderfully talented practicing CPAs. It happens in professional licensing areas. But anyway, that's what DEI means. I don't even go long-winded on that. We're going to talk about the things that you and I are going to do a lot more of come the first Monday in October, which is the start of the new term for the United States Supreme Court. If you hated the last 2 terms, you're going to hate the next term of the United States Supreme Court. We're going to try to make sense of it by having regular duets where you and I get together to talk about the cases, maybe about the oral arguments, the briefing, and things that matter. And we already know the lineup that's coming there. We got a case or a new development that's happened in the United States Supreme Court with another leak of another opinion about what else? Women's rights, women's reproductive rights, and abortion. We're going to talk about that, the reforms that President Harris would implement, started by President Joe Biden before he gets out at the end of January, right before the inauguration. But first, another word from our sponsors. Proper sleep can increase focus, boost energy, and improve your mood. Introducing Beam's Dream Powder, a science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep. If you know me, you know that Dream has been a game changer for my sleep, and boy, do I need sleep these days. I drink Beam's Dream Powder each night in order to get my optimal sleep. And I gotta say, I wouldn't be recommending this if it didn't actually help me. And today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder. Their science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. Better sleep has never tasted better. Now available in delicious flavors like chocolate peanut butter, cinnamon cocoa, and sea salt caramel, with only 15 calories and 0 grams of sugar. Other sleep aids can cause next-day grogginess, but Dream contains a powerful all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, melatonin, and nano CBD to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. The numbers don't lie. In a clinical study, 93% of participants reported Dream helped them get better sleep. Beam Dream is easy to add to your nighttime routine. Just mix Dream into hot water or milk froth and enjoy before bed. Find out why Forbes and the New York Times are all talking about Beam and why it's trusted by the world's top athletes and business professionals. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/legalaf and use code legalaf at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/legalaf and use code legalaf for up to 40% off. I do laundry a lot, but I wasn't a big fan of my old laundry detergent and how it makes my clothes feel and smell. This podcast is sponsored by Laundry Sauce. Laundry Sauce created the world's best-smelling laundry detergent in simple-to-use high-performance pods. Laundry Sauce has transformed the mundane task of doing laundry into a luxurious and exciting experience so you don't have to dread laundry day anymore. Earlier this week, I just used the Australian sandalwood pods and my clothes smell amazing. My wife thought I changed my cologne. So what's the secret sauce behind Laundry Sauce? They partnered with one of the top fragrance houses in the world, the same team behind many of your favorite designer scents. From Australian sandalwood to Egyptian rose to cyber pine with Laundry Sauce, laundry day will never smell the same again. Plus, they stripped away all the unnecessary ingredients and artificial dyes and maximized the hard-working, science-backed stain fighters and enzymes to ensure your favorite clothes come out looking brand new. Check out the reviews on their site. They are some of the funniest, most authentic reviews you'll ever read. Laundry Sauce was started back in 2021 by a team who were bored by the mundane scents in the detergent aisle, so they decided to make a product that was conscious, relevant, and innovative. And it's not just pods. Laundry Sauce makes scent boosters, dryer sheets, dryer balls, fabric softeners, and even candles too. Plus, if you aren't happy, send back Laundry Sauce for a full refund. No questions asked. Elevate your laundry with Laundry Sauce. Now is the time to experience Laundry Sauce. Head to laundrysauce.com/legalaf and use promo code legalaf at checkout for 15% off. That's the best offer you'll find, but you must use my code legalaf for 15% off your order. One last time, that's laundrysauce.com/legalaf, promo code legalaf for 15% off. Oh boy, do I have a lot of laundry with a newborn. I'll just leave it at that. But we do love Laundry Sauce. And good news for our audience that's hung in there with us. Meidas Touch is going to be doing a sort of a rebroadcast of the Kamala Harris speech that we've been talking about at length today, right after this particular live Legal AF. We're going to go right over there. You'll be transported by our production team over to the Kamala Harris speech, and you can make your own judgment. You don't have to just listen to our applauding her. You can make your own judgment and listen to everything that we just talked about. So again, right after we conclude here, you can head over to on the Meidas Touch Network. As you can see, we do what we can do. We do commentary, we do hot takes, we do podcasts, we do live streams of things that we think are important at the intersection of law and politics, or just about politics, or just about law. Whatever we can get our hands on that we think our audience wants, we try to do. So let me just turn this next over to you by just framing it this way. Several months ago, well, actually it's in June, we had a decision that, even though we thought it was a weird collection of voting and concurring opinions and dissenting opinions, or whatever it was, we got this decision that seemed to allow, at least for temporarily for now, the Biden administration position that EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Labor Act and all, which required that a medical provider provide an abortion in case of the health reasons about the mother, or life or death about the mother, and that EMTALA, especially for hospitals that took federal aid, Medicare, Medicaid, that kind of thing, or other federal funding, which they all do, that they would have to, a doctor, even in a state like Idaho, that had a near total ban on abortion, under EMTALA, they would have to give the abortion if the life of the mother was in danger, was at risk. And that was one of the ways that President Joe Biden, he'll go down in history as one of our greatest presidents, I am sure, he was able to, with executive law, after he ordered, let me just talk about how this happens. He ordered all federal agencies and heads of his federal agencies to comb through all regulations under their remit and come up with things that he could do without congressional action, because of the do-nothing Congress, the do-nothing MAGA Congress that he's been shackled with for the last 2 years or more, and come up with ways through executive order or interpretations of existing regulations on the books that he could help women and elevate them from second-class citizens that don't have the right over their own bodies, and try to put back a measure of reproductive rights and autonomy over women. One of the ways they came up with was EMTALA. And this, we got a ruling. It was a per curiam. There was not really like a majority opinion. There was all these concurrences. We're like, what is going on with this decision? And now we got a leak that's happened yet again. Let me just leave it this way. I've been a lawyer for 33 years. I studied law from 88 to 91 at a pretty good university, pretty good law school. Okay. And I've been following the law and a student of the law ever since. We've had books written. This is different. We've had books written like The Brethren and some other books by Jeffrey Toobin about the Supreme Court that like 2, 3, 5, 10 years after a decision talk about some insider things that happened, right? Like the clerks would talk to the reporters or the journalists and we get, oh, that's what happened 10 years ago. But in real time, in the same term, a leak? Never. And we had it during the Dobbs decision, which was actually in draft leaked. And now we have it again about what happened in Idaho. Talk about that. What do we think it means? Who do we think the leaker is? Do we think more leaks are coming? And what does it mean for what Joe Biden's trying to do from now until January 20th at 11:59 a.m. and what it means for Kamala Harris moving forward in terms of her presidency and as they address this third co-equal branch of government?
I don't think we can overstate the palace intrigue with these leaks. Like you said, for us lawyers, this is huge. We saw the leak with Dobbs. This leak, evidently, the leaker is saying there's a lot more leaks coming. I think this is a reflection. I mean, there's so much outside the Supreme Court. We're seeing, right, the violations of the ethics with Justice Alito and Justice Thomas, and we're seeing them overturn precedent with Dobbs and with this absolute immunity decision. But now that you can see basically the infighting, I think, of the Supreme Court with these leaks. There's definitely one or more than one people there that are kind of attacking it from the inside because these leaks are not good for the court. This particular leak, interesting, and it's interesting, like you say, so far it's all been about abortion, which, as we know, like that's a big issue for Justice Alito. So this latest leak, they decided after hearing the oral arguments that they were going to decide 6-3 to basically allow Idaho to continue not to give life-saving or care to women and not give the abortion. And then the Chief Justice did an interesting thing, which is not assign a draft. Was it because he was worried about a Dobbs leak? Maybe. And then during their private negotiations, they changed their mind. And instead of ruling on the merits, they did this procedural decision that kind of punted the decision. So for now, it's like status quo and it's punting it. It's probably going to come down later. And so leaking these private discussions that showed that Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Roberts were the ones who went from kind of upholding the strict Idaho abortion ban to punting it later. I think it's probably their way of trying to put pressure maybe on those two justices to get in line. I imagine they're going to be hearing from the Leonard Leos and the Heritage Foundations of the world, but we don't really know, right? This is where the palace intrigue is. We don't really know. What we know, though, is Chief Justice Roberts is rapidly losing control of his court. We saw it with the opinions. This latest absolute immunity opinion is something I think Justice Roberts never would have wanted to do. I think he put his name on it in order to try to show some semblance that he has control of the court. And now with these leaks, he's losing practical control of the court. And the interesting thing is when they did their investigation over the Dobbs leak, everybody was interviewed under penalty of perjury, under oath, except for the 9 justices, because they like to put themselves above the law like everyone else. No wonder they didn't find the leaker. So it'll be interesting to see what Chief Justice Roberts do. How serious is he about finding the leaker? Will he bring in somebody from the outside? Will he make the justices go under oath? What is he going to do to prevent future leaks? Because according to this leaker, it's going to keep coming. So between what the Biden-Harris administration is planning on doing in terms of the enforceable ethics code, what AOC just did with her impeachment articles. I did a video on that here for Meidas Touch. It's astounding, that impeachment filing here, seeing everything all in one document. It was so thorough. We're getting a shift here. Republicans for a long time emphasize the court. We are catching up. I think we're catching up rapidly. And I do think this is going to be a very interesting time for the court, between the leakers and the new ethics enforcement and all of the cases they have coming on. Can Chief Justice Roberts get this under control, or will he finally realize he needs to do something? That will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think Joe Biden and when Kamala becomes president, they're going to have to do the things that they can do without a constitutional amendment. Court packing is one of them. The Constitution doesn't require a number of justices. We just kind of settled on 9 eventually. And so it can be done in other ways. It's not through a presidential act. Of course, the Supreme Court will have something to say about it. They always try to get involved with their own power and authority. But, expanding the court would be nice. Term limits, I like that idea. And then things like having an independent counsel that's baked into the Constitution, that will require a constitutional amendment. Maybe we've reached, I normally would say maybe we need another constitutional convention. Maybe we need to get together as a people with the right people in charge and figure out how to amend certain aspects of the Constitution that hasn't been amended for a long, long time. When the Equal Rights Amendment died a slow death. Yeah. There's an argument that it passed, but there's the fact that an Equal Rights Amendment to make women equal to men could not get passed in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even through to today tells you something. But we're going to follow it all that Supreme Court stuff, what happens with the new administration, and right here on the Meidas Touch Network. And the way to support the network, for those that wonder, is you have contributors like Dina Doll and me and others, and we do various things for the network. I do hot takes. Dina does hot takes. We come on and do commentary on the various shows, including live analysis for things that happen and that are breaking news. We've got other podcasts that are part of the Legal AF kind of community and world. We've got Mistrial with Karen Friedman Ignifilo and Danya Perry and Kathleen Rice, which is also like another podcast here, and you support that. We talked about our sponsors. We talked about Patreon. We got patreon.com/legalaf, where there's exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else. It's tutorials. It's a TED Talk meets a law school class and has a baby all in one on Legal AF. We're doing a special on Monday as I said earlier, on Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to be doing a live Zoom for paid members. That's associate, counsel, and partner level members of Legal AF with Ben Meiselas and me. Fire away, ask your questions. We will answer them live. And if we can't get to them on the screen, we'll do them in the live chat. And that once you join, or if you're already a member, there's a link. And if you upgrade, there's a link. And if you join now, there's a link for you to join us on Monday. And that's another way. And then we got a merchandise store.meidastouch.com, where you can find you can fly your Legal AF flag, all sorts of t-shirts, coffee mugs, and all sorts of things like that. And then help the network, because we're on a network and it's an independent network without outside investors. It's growing organically. It's literally just growing by word of mouth. When I heard the numbers we talk about the surge of new members that came in when Kamala became the candidate, Vice President Harris became the candidate, it's impacted the Meidas Touch Network. It's brought like-minded people to come here. And there are a fair amount of Republicans and independents that are here. I know it because they reach out to me, or they're in my life and they tell me they watch, not just because of me. And so, we are a community that is organic and homemade and hand-built and important. And so support the network, because everything that we talk about, if our foundation didn't exist, you wouldn't know about Dina Doll. You wouldn't know about Michael Popok, Ben Meiselas, Jordy, Brett, Karen, or anybody else that's on our network. You would know about us. We'd just be going about our days, doing our own things, whatever we're doing. But here, the Meidas Touch Network, we're a community with you. And so help that network get through free subscription. People say, how do I do that? It's very easy. You're watching here. If you haven't already free subscribed, go back out to the Meidas Touch channel, right, on the YouTube, and look, just a big button. It says, big oval button, says subscription, subscribe. Click it. That's it. Nothing to pay for. There's other ways to help us by supporting us with Patreon and this and that. But the number one way is that. Watch our show till the end. It helps with the algorithms. Watch it later. Get the audio version. We're on every major audio podcast platform. You plug in Legal AF, and there we are. These are the ways that you can be part of this community, right? in this participatory democracy that we got going on here that we call Meidas Touch. Dina, you want to keep doing duets?
I would love to keep doing it. This is such an exciting time.
Yeah.
And I love this community. I love it. I love it when people reach out and comment back to me and on social media. Like, it's the most amazing community. And I'm so honored that I get to be talking about these really important issues. And I love that we get to be excited. We had that conviction, which was amazing. And then we had some bad news, and we got back up and we are better than ever. And these next few months, I'm so excited to keep talking the talk with you, Popok.
Yep. And as Ben, I appreciate you too, Dina. You and I got to meet a couple of times, both in California and in New York, and form a bond and a friendship there with your great husband too. And so I want to just remind people, we are going to be going directly from here as soon as I sign off here to the Kamala Harris speech at Texas sorority today, which I think is very important. It's part of the building blocks of her campaign, the closing argument that she's making, and how she immediately counterpunches everything that Donald Trump does. I mean, it's like that old children's taunt, right? I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off you and sticks to me, whatever it is. I screwed it up, but you know what I mean. And she's doing it, and she's getting the drop on him. And it is infuriating him, which is pressurizing him to make more mistakes that unmask him. I don't know who thought his convention was going to be about unity. That's over. We're back to this ridiculous racist old man trying to get back into the White House to continue his kleptocracy and sweep in all of the felons and family member grifters along with him. We have a way to stop that. We are the firewall that stops that and makes history by voting for Kamala Harris to be the president of the United States. So we got another show on Saturday with Ben, Mysalis, and me. Got hot takes all along the way. Watch for Dina, with me, without me, with Francis Maxwell sometimes, right here on the Meidas Touch Network. So until our next show, shout out to the Legal AFers and to the Meidas Mighty.